Superior hiding, superior coverage, simply superior.
Sasso insecticide spray and coil.
Hello, good evening, welcome. This is Ghana Tonight. We're live from News about Desawe Kanda, also live on TV3 Ghana on Facebook and DSTV channel 279. We're all across the world on 3news.com. We're also on 3FM 92.7. We're streaming as well on YouTube at 3 News on YouTube. Tonight, the ruling National Democratic Congress secures a 2/3 majority in this 9th Parliament after the Ablekuma North Member of Parliament-elect Irama Obin is sworn in earlier today. Now, what does this mean for parliamentary business? What can they do now and what can't they do? We'll break it down for you to understand exactly what the numbers and the numerical representation of Irama Obin being sworn in today as MP for Ablekuma North. What does it really mean? Stay with us. We'll have a conversation tonight. Also, still in Parliament, let's stay a bit further in Parliament tonight as a Deputy Minority Leader. This is news that's been developing over the last 1 hour. The Deputy Minority Leader, Patricia Piaget, has declined to replace the Minority Leader, Alexander Apenyomarking, on Ghana's ECOWAS Parliament delegation, calling the move divisive and a threat to minority unity in Parliament. We've got details for you. A very interesting development that's been evolving over the last 60 minutes that we got this notice or this statement from Patricia Piaget herself. It's following from what happened in Parliament earlier today, and there was a decision to replace Alexander Apenyomarking with his deputy on the ECOWAS Parliament. Well, that's something that's going to come up because we'll get into it tonight with this latest development from Patricia Piaget. Also tonight, the 2024 Auditor-General's report has revealed damning irregularities, raising fresh concerns over public fund management. We speak to an anti-corruption campaigner about what all of this means, especially when what we're learning now is that over 86% of the entire financial irregularities in the public sector was recorded in the energy sector. 86%. Now, what does this mean? Stay with us. We're going to get into it, especially because it's coming at a time when we're being asked to pay something more in levies so government can deal with the energy sector debt. And then we're having this from the Auditor-General's report. As always, you're an integral part of the conversation. Let's hear from you. The hashtag we're using is Ghana Tonight on Facebook and on X. Let's get talking. Let's settle for Ghana Briefs.
The Speaker of Parliament, Alban Bagbin, has urged the majority caucus to exercise tolerance and maturity in Parliament and not abuse their 2/3 majority. Speaking after the swearing-in of Irama Obin as MP for Ablekuma North, he stressed that the voice of the minority must always be respected.
We should not use the overwhelming majority to try to bully or stifle the minority from having their say on the floor of Parliament. You, when you are given this mandate, must act as the father and mother of the nation. So you must have the patience.
Deputy Minority Leader Patricia Piaget has declined inclusion in Ghana's delegation to ECOWAS Parliament, saying she was neither present nor was she given consent to be included in the delegation. This follows the reconstitution of the delegation, replacing Minority Leader Alexander Apenyomarking with Deputy Minority Leader Patricia Piaget. The decision, communicated by the majority leader, was opposed by some minority MPs who urged that it be deferred and discussed in conclave. This happened earlier in Parliament.
Honorable Alexander Kwamina Afoyo-Michael Osahene is removed and Honorable Patricia Apiaje is replaced as the member of the delegation that will be representing this Parliament at the ECOWAS Parliament.
I think that the leadership should not be moving motions and asking the House to take decisions that they should take and bringing it to us. Because the majority have majority to fight the decision of the majority on the minority about representation. So I'll urge the majority leader to stand down on this motion, do negotiations on the points which you raise, which are very legitimate.
Former Electoral Commission Chair Charlotte Osei says the late President John Evans Atta-Mills would be heartbroken by the destruction caused by illegal mining, the growing disregard for the truth in the media, particularly online, and the worsening culture of blind partisanship. Delivering this year's the 13th John Evans Atta-Mills Memorial Lecture, she said these troubling developments stand in stark contrast to the values of integrity, humility, and national unity the former president embodied.
As we honor Prof's memory, we must also commit ourselves to continuing his work. This is not just the responsibility of those who knew him personally, but of all Ghanaians and all Africans who share his vision of a better future. I have wondered many times, would Prof be happy with us, with me, with the current state of Ghana? I think Prof would be outraged at how we are permitting galamsey to damage our environments, our bodies, and our future.
The Minister of Tourism, Culture and Creative Arts, Ablaji Fagomashi, has inaugurated a reconstituted Restitution and Restoration Committee. The 11-member committee is expected to coordinate national and international efforts to trace and return Ghana's stolen cultural treasures.
These items are not just symbols of our past. They are vessels of identity, memory, and pride. Their absence has left a painful void in our historical narrative and in the soul of our nation. Your work must be anchored on integrity, diplomacy, historical rigor, and unwavering patriotism.
As Ghana prepares for its mid-year budget review this Thursday, July 24, 2025, key economic indicators suggest a robust recovery is underway. This offers a positive outlook for the nation's financial health, but sustaining the gains is key for growth. Chief Executive Officer of Dalex Finance, Joe Jackson, believes sustaining the gains is a difficult part.
To manage this economy, manage the currency, manage inflation, manage our debt and our borrowing are things in the right direction. But at the same time, a word of caution. It does not mean that Ghana is still not broke. It does not mean our debts are not horrendous. Energy sector debt could kill us. That inflation still needs some work in order to bring it down to single digits.
Oh, there's more news on 3news.com. Make some time and visit 3news.com. This is Ghana Tonight. We're live as well on 3FM 92.7. Also on TV3 Ghana on Facebook and on DSTV channel 279. We're all across the world on 3news.com. Also streaming live on YouTube on 3 News YouTube page. And as always, probably brought to you by Flamingo Paint, Simply Superior, and Sasso Insecticide Spray and Coil Tum Tum Precom. Coming up next, we'll go start up the journey in Parliament because today, the National Democratic Congress NDC majority in Parliament has been cemented, concrete, 2/3 majority, with the swearing in of the Ablekuma North Member of Parliament, Irabna Orban, What does this 2/3 majority for the National Democratic Congress mean for parliamentary business? Now, we're going to get into the numbers. So to understand the meaning of the numbers of this NDC MPs in Parliament, this 9th Parliament, what does it mean for the business of the House? What can they do? What can they do with these numbers? And how are things going to play out in the coming days as well? Because this numerical representation in this 9th Parliament goes beyond just the numbers. We're going to get into it shortly. But earlier today, the Speaker of Parliament, Right Honourable Sumana Kinsford-Bagwin, has urged the majority caucus to exercise tolerance and maturity in Parliament and not abuse their 2/3 majority. Speaking after the swearing-in of Rabina Oben as MP for Blakema North constituency, he stressed that the voice of the minority must also be respected. Take a look.
The Congress. In the 2nd Parliament, we had almost the same 2/3. The NPP then had 61 members. The other parties, that PNC, CVP together, had 6 with an independent member. And that took the parties not in government to a total of 67. And the NDC had 133. That was about 2/3. In 1994, the then President Jerry John Rawlings, called us to a meeting and told us, like what the majority leader just referred to, that we should not use the overwhelming majority to try to bully or stifle the minority from having their say on the floor of Parliament. You, when you are given this mandate, must act as the father and mother of the nation. So you must have the patience, you must have the tolerance to listen to the other side. I hope and pray that this exhortation from both presidents, His Excellency Jerry John Rawlings and His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, will be taken by you. We must allow our colleagues in the minority to have their say.
Well, that's the Speaker of Parliament, the Right Honourable Sumana Kinsford-Bagwin. But the minority will certainly have their say. But then, what about the majority? Its leader in Parliament, Mama Yarga, in response said, they will not abuse their numbers with what is happening now in this 9th Parliament, but use it for the good of the nation. This is Mama Yarga. Take a look.
With her addition to this House, the National Democratic Congress has had its number increased by 1 more. Mr. Speaker, I think we now have, the NDC now has 2/3 of the House. Mr. Speaker, let me repeat that the National Democratic Congress now, for the first time in a very long time, has 2/3 of this House. Mr. Speaker, with this number, we can do many good things for this country. With this number, we can carry out significant constitutional reforms to make this country better. Ghanaians today have given us all the numbers that we need to reset Ghana. And indeed, Mr. Speaker, I want to assure Ghanaians that what President John Dramani Mahama said when he was being sworn in still stands, that the National Democratic Congress will not abuse the majority given to it by Ghanaians.
Well, so that's Mama Yarga, the majority leader of this 9th Parliament there. Dennis Baberi Wadam Esquire is joining me in the studio. It's good to have you.
Thank you, Alfred.
On a legal night like this, as always. You hear Mama Yarga make the point, and let's underscore, Ablekuma North now has a representation in Parliament.
Yes.
After a long time.
That must be good news to them.
Absolutely. The constituents of Ablekuma North.
Yeah.
Indeed. Over 6 months of not represented in this 9th Parliament. Rabno Ben is there.
They almost became the SAL of this Parliament. But
True.
fortunately, I mean, now they have representation beginning today.
The greatest sin of our republic shouldn't have repeated itself. But then again, you hear Mama Yarga say that the numbers as they have it now gives them that overwhelming majority to do a number of things, do business in the House and significant constitutional reforms to make Ghana better. What can they do with these numbers and what can they do? Let's get into what the law says.
Well, but Alfred, even before today, you may have heard some make comments about what a 2/3 majority in Parliament can do.
Sure.
Some have even exaggerated to say that a 2/3 majority Parliament can actually do everything except change a man to a woman or a woman to a man. But let's put this through a litmus test and see really some of the things that they can do. But of course, the key thing that has been bandied around has to do with the term of office of President John Dramani Mahama.
True.
There have been conversation about whether or not he can run for the 3rd term, even though he has indicated
that he is not.
Yes.
So that with this 2/3 majority, the NDC
So there's that narrative that with the 2/3 majority, and even the build-up to the Ablekuma North, you may have heard on the campaign platforms that the NDC wanted 2/3 majority so they could amend some portions of the constitution to enable John Dramani Mahama, President John Dramani Mahama, go for a 3rd term.
True.
Let's look if that can even be possible with the 2/3 majority they have beginning today.
Let's get into the law.
Sure.
As always.
So let's start from the provision that spells out the tenure of office for our president. When you look at that, you find that in Article 66. And for purposes of context and clarity, we produced sections 1 and 2 so that to put the matters in context. So Article 66(1) says that a person elected as president shall, subject to clause 3 of this article, hold office for a term of 4 years, beginning from the date on which he is sworn in as president. Now, it goes on to say in 2 that a person shall not be elected to hold office as president of Ghana for more than 2 terms. And this has become the very contentious provision for which others say it needs to be interpreted, others say it is settled and all that.
Yes.
But we're not going into interpretation of it, though.
Absolutely.
We are looking at the argument that a 2/3 majority possibly can amend this particular provision to make it read something beyond this.
And what the position of the law is?
This is Article 66. Now, for an amendment of the Constitution, it is provided for, or the procedure is provided for in the Constitution itself.
Right.
So when you look at Article 289, it provides for the amendment of the Constitution. 290 indicates certain things that need to be done in respect of certain provisions.
Right.
So they group them into entrenched provisions and those that are not entrenched provisions, and how entrenched provisions can actually be amended.
Sure.
So if we begin to look at that, this is 290 from clauses 2 to 6. And we have actually reproduced this at its full length so that we can properly appreciate the matter.
Context is key.
Now remember, when you look at 289, you would find that the said article 66 falls under the executive. Now the entire executive, the provisions under executive are entrenched provisions.
So Article 66 that spells out the term of office of the president is an entrenched clause?
Yes, because the executive begins from Article 57 to Article 88.
Okay.
So clearly this falls within that. So it means this provision is an entrenched provision in the Constitution, for which an amendment would have to comply with the provision spelled out in Article 292 to 6.
Right.
Now 292 says that a bill for the amendment of an entrenched clause, so wherever we see an entrenched clause, you may want to replace it with that we have seen already about the tenure of office of the president.
Right.
Shall, before Parliament proceeds to consider it, be referred by the Speaker to the Council of State for its advice, and the Council of State shall render an advice on the bill within 30 days after receiving it. So here you see the rules of the Speaker, Council of State.
Yes.
You don't see the rule of voting of parliamentarians and what composition. No.
Doing anything. Right.
Clause 3 says that the bill shall be published in the Gazette, but shall not be introduced into Parliament until the expiry of 6 months after the publication in the Gazette under this clause. 4 says that after the bill has been read the first time in Parliament, it shall not be proceeded with further, unless it has been submitted to a referendum held throughout Ghana, and at least 40% of the persons entitled to vote voted at that referendum, and at least 75% of the persons who voted cast their votes in favor of the passing of the bill. I would want us to look at this again.
Emphasis is key.
4 says that after the bill has been read the first time in Parliament, it shall not be proceeded with further unless it has been submitted to a referendum. And it continues. It gives you the breakdown of the percentage of persons who are supposed to vote and what the outcome would be.
So essentially what this means is that in the entire country, all 16 regions,
yes, the
will
voter
have
population
to have a say on whether or not
exactly
this constitutional provision of the term limit
threshold of voter turnout in this should be at least 40%. So if the voter turnout turns out to be like anything below 40%, it means it does not hold. And of the at least 40% who will vote or who are entitled to vote, if they vote, at least 70% of that number should have
75.
Come again?
Is 75%.
Yes, 75%.
Yes.
Of that number should vote in favor of passing the bill for the amendment of that entrenched provision. In this case, we are talking about the tenure of office of the president as provided for under Article 66(2). Now it continues to say, where the bill is approved at the referendum, Parliament shall pass it.
So that's the only time.
Now, if Parliament is passing a bill, it falls under the category of decision. It's a decision-taking activity on the floor of Parliament.
Right.
And that has already been established. It's in the Constitution, but established just recently in the case of Justice Abdullahi and the Attorney General. Look at what the quorum should be. At least half of the members should be in there, then majority. The safe clause says that where a bill for the amendment of an entrenched provision has been passed by Parliament in accordance with this article, the President shall assent to it. Having gone through all of this,
I think that
on the face of the law, you do not see where you would have a 2/3 majority play a role in the amendment of that particular provision.
To extend the term.
To extend or reduce or to do anything to that particular provision.
And so all of it rests on the 4.
Exactly.
4
talks about the
spells
referendum.
out exactly what.
So it gives Ghanaians that opportunity to
have a
decide
say.
whether or not such a provision should be amended.
So it all boils down to the politics of things. It had nothing.
So what
to
it
do
means
with
is
law.
that it may not necessarily be about 2/3 majority, but of course, when it comes to voting, who controls Parliament would definitely have their way in terms of the numbers. But the numbers must not necessarily be a 2/3 majority.
Precisely. It has to be. But then again, before even getting to the role of the majority in Parliament, they should have crossed the 4. Therefore,
that is
a referendum,
key.
And then at least 40% of eligible voters turning out to vote, and at least 75% of the 40% saying, yes, we want the president to have a 3rd term.
Yes.
So this really has...
Then we go back to Parliament.
That's the only time?
Yes.
Okay. So then where lies that argument about this majority of the NDC having the power to change the constitution?
You know, on the campaign platform, a lot of things are said that the voting population do not have the opportunity to question or to even ask the people who say such things to explain further. But of course, when you take a careful look at it, just like we have done, you would appreciate that it's not really the question of 2/3 majority, but it's clearly a matter of a referendum.
And that's why you're here, as a matter of fact. So it's just a question of law.
Precisely so.
And that's the more reason why Dennis Poberi Wadam Esquire, you're here with me every step of the way, right? And I do appreciate you. Stay with me because we're going to have a conversation on this. Dr. Rashid Rahman, Executive Director of the Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs. Also, we have Dr. Jonathan Asantioche. He's a political analyst and a senior lecturer at the University of Cape Coast. He's joining us. I'll start with you, Dr. Asantioche. I mean, with this very important clarity of what the position of the law is as given by Dennis, it appears certainly that this bit about the NDC now having this 2/3 majority with the Ablekuma North MP, in fact, they can do business even without the support of the 4 independent MPs on the floor of Parliament. This bit about they using that number to attempt to extend the tenure of John Mahama, it all about the politics and nothing to do with law, is it not? Hello, Doc.
Alfred, are you referring to me?
Yes, I can hear you clearly. It's you to you. Yes.
Well, let me say good evening to our viewers and to your good self. I do not foresee that happening. I know that power, they say, corrupts, and power corrupts absolutely. And absolute power corrupt absolute. The point is that, look, I do not foresee the current NDC leadership thinking of something of that sort. And I listened carefully to Dennis and the various articles that he read. If you listen carefully to the president, I do not really know who is fomenting or stoking this particular idea of a third term, or probably amending the constitution, as it were, so that you'll be able to have a third term. I am of the view that if indeed you have the opportunity to take over the mantle of this country, you have to go by the constitutional provision. And it says that you can only do 2 terms. And so Mr. Mahama is in the 2nd term, and I don't see anything negative about that. Apart from that, you see, Mr. Mahama is going to leave power definitely by 2028 or 2029, January 7th. You definitely have to hand over. The problem that the NDC will be thinking about is more or less like, okay, we don't have to do things that will anger or get the ordinary Ghanaian more agitated against us. And what do? We need to ensure that the transition is done carefully and appropriately. And so if the transition is done, then there is no problem. The point too ought to be made, and that is the fact that there is that temptation of you abusing your majority or super majority, whatever that you want to describe, that particular phenomenon with. And that temptation could easily happen when you have an executive that is overbearing on the legislature. Here is the case. If you listen to the president, especially his inaugural speech, you will appreciate the fact that he just does not want to take the mandate that has been given him for granted. That is a promise that he gave all of us. So sometimes I wonder where these things are coming from. Mr. Mahama, that some of us know him from afar or close, I don't think that we really appreciate what he intends to do, and for on daily basis, counseling and projecting the idea that, look, you guys must not take the mandate that you've been given for granted. And is ever ready that if any of his appointees should err, he's just going to fire you. So if you look at the organogram of Parliament now, you'll have to appreciate the fact that Ghanaians decided to give the NDC this particular victory. Maybe it could be a test case, but would they be able to surmount it? I think the leadership is ready to surmount that. That is how I see it. But remember, we are in an information era. And look, the way and manner Ghanaians voted for the NDC, if they do the unthinkable, probably theirs will even be worse than what the NPP experienced because of the information era. And it is very easy for people to blackmail, to poison the minds of people, using these social media platforms. But the same information era is what is keeping the government in check. And so for me, I think that everything is in order. They have given the mandate to the NDC because that is what they decided to do. And it is because the NPP and the President Akufo-Addo and Dr. Bawumia performed abysmally. And that is why Ghanaians decided, they took that particular decision. It could be a test case, as I said. But, hey, I don't think that we may consider it as very accidental.
Great. Ghanaians
decided to give
right. You're saying that it could be. You're saying it could be a test case, yes, and that's why I bring in Dr. Rashid Rahman. The point that Dr. Jonathan Asante makes about this being a test case because of how power tends to, get people to behave. Has there been any indication from your own observation for the past 6 months that this NDC majority in this 9th parliament has been working, that they would abuse or misuse or muscle through the workings of parliament with this supermajority that they have?
Yes, Alfred, to the contrary, I mean, at least based on what we have heard and what we have seen, it looks as if they are showing early signals that they are going to use their numbers, the majority, for the good of the country, and they are going to be a listening majority. We saw 2 days ago the bill on scholarships withdrawn for further consultations. We had the president, and today we had the majority leaders repeat what the president has said, that they are not going to abuse their numbers. But it's early days yet, and I hope they don't fall into the trap of, the risks that supermajorities pose to democracies. Wherever there is a supermajority, if it is not properly checked and monitored by a credible opposition and by a very vigilant, vibrant media and an active civil society, then a number of risks emerge, including, among many, the possibility of constitutional overreach, where the majority can use the numbers to tinker with the constitution to give it an advantage politically, not necessarily for the good of the country. The possibility of maybe a transformative parliament being quickly turned into a rubber stamp legislative body that endorses anything that comes without proper scrutiny, without any analysis. The possibility of, stifling dissent, both from within, because the majority can easily dispense with a few of its members and still command the numbers that it needs, or stifling dissent from without, that is not giving the minority the space. And then maybe even beyond that, reaching out to stifling dissent within the broader society. So these are possible and potential risks that, characterize supermajorities that go unchecked, and that also, get used irresponsibly. So I hope that, this precious gift that Ghana has given to the NDC is used the other way. That is
and I want to hold you on that point that you just made, because really, in reality, the NDC majority in this 9th Parliament, for most of the time we've seen this Parliament sit, they have not had the full complement of the 184 MPs that they have in Parliament during sittings. In fact, yesterday, typical example, this Mahama Cares bill, they had to be passed. They didn't have the numbers on the floor of Parliament as well. So really, it's about it's a numbers issue. If they're not able to get the full complement of their majority in Parliament, whatever fears you have about they being abusive of their powers would not hold, is it not?
Indeed, that's what it boils down to. I mean, they they have the numbers, and you know, the other thing is to make sure that the members are present and doing their work. So far, I think what we have seen has not been too encouraging in terms of quorum, in terms of you know, they being representative enough. I mean, that is the NDC. Because if you have 184 now, and you can't mobilize about 92 members to form a quorum, I mean that should be a cause for concern. But let me say this, Alfred. I mean, during critical moments when they need their members to be there for critical votes, I'm sure they can always, I mean, master that. But I mean, that is not what we want the majority to be used for. We want the members to be in the House at all times to do the work that Ghana has voted them to do. So yes, indeed, I mean, the attendance is poor, is disappointing, to say the least. But I can tell you, when it is the stakes are high, I mean, in every parliament you would get, I mean, we have seen even instances or heard about instances when people have been carried from their hospital beds to come and make up the numbers.
Precisely.
Or people have been asked to return from abroad.
Yes, we saw some of them
to come and make up the numbers.
And this is why I bring in Dr. Jonathan.
That is not what we are looking for, and that is not what this majority should be.
And Dr. Asantotri, on this representation, this 184 that the majority, the supermajority, the NDC has, we've seen them still struggle with numbers, as in the MPs being present on the floor of Parliament to do business for the majority. And yesterday was a typical example. So it appears clearly that the leadership of the majority has some work to do in whipping their members into line, is it not?
Yeah, certainly. I think that Honorable Dafiama has a lot of work to do. Maybe he's a bit relaxed when it comes to him gripping membership, you know, of Parliament, especially those coming from their fold, as it were, to ensure that they attend Parliament. I was thinking that the host of amendment that they made in the 8th, you know, Parliament, under the leadership of the Speaker, you know, we're going to see some more of responsive, you know, kind of representation with respect to the amendment that they made. And it's surprising that we are seeing things of that nature. I don't want to think that there is some kind of something underneath this particular decision on the part of the majority. I don't want to believe that some members of Parliament have become apathetic, you know, towards the executive. Probably, you know, issues of appointment and so on and so forth.
Right.
And so this in itself could be a sort of protest So if that is the case, then it means that Mr. Dafiama Paul will have to listen, or will have to have some kind of meeting, not only with leadership, but with the general, composition of majority in parliament.
Okay.
That is more important, so that they can easily tell him their grievances. And if their grievances boil down to the suspicion that I'm having,
right,
then certainly that information could easily, be led to, as it were, the executive, so that telepathy could be there.
All right. All right, I appreciate your for this. And stay with me, Dr. Zanchachi, because we're getting into the next issue where I'll still engage you and Dr. Rashid Rahman on it. And that's coming up next, still in Parliament or matters related to Parliament, because just about some 60 minutes ago, we got this notice from the Deputy Minority Leader. It says, Alexander Apenyomarking, earlier today, the decision was taken to have him replaced on Ghana's delegation to the ECOWAS Parliament, but the person who was named to replace him says she does not want this position, this appointment. She doesn't want to be part of it. She doesn't want to hear it. She's never thought of it. She sees this as a divisive move by Parliament. And if you recall earlier today, Parliament approved this reconstitution of Ghana's delegation to the ECOWAS Parliament, replacing Minority Leader Alexander Apenyomarking with the Deputy Minority Leader Patricia Appiagyei. Now, the decision communicated by the Majority Leader, Mama Yarga, was opposed by some minority MPs who urged that it be deferred and discussed in conclave. Let's take a listen to exactly what Mama Yarga, the Majority Leader, said. And then also we had Dominic Nitiwu speak and raise concerns about that communication. Take a look.
For the ECOWAS delegation, we have Honorable George Kweku Ricketts-Hagan as the leader of the delegation. Then we have Honorable Emmanuel Kwesi Bedzora, who has always been a member of the delegation, to remain a member. Honorable Ladi Ayamba, who has been a long-standing member of the delegation, to remain a member. Honorable Eric Afo is being added as a member. Honorable Dominic Napare is being added as a member. Mr. Speaker, it captures Honorable Alexander Kwamina Afanyomarking Osahin as a member. Honorable Kwame Aimedu Entry as a member. Honorable Brian Achampong as a member. And the discussion was to include Honorable Millicent Yeboah Amankwa as an observer. Mr. Speaker, there's still an issue with this composition. And the issue stems from the fact that the ECOWAS Parliament has some very, very firm position on the membership of female members of the delegation. The delegation must have, I think, 30% of the members being women. The position of this parliament has always been to send the deputy leaders as members of the delegation. That has always been the tradition. I shall move pursuant to our standing orders for the amendment of the composition of the delegation so that Honorable Alexander Kwamina Afanyomarking Osahini is removed and Honorable Patricia Appiagyei is replaced as the member of the delegation that will be representing this parliament at the ECOWAS Parliament.
I think that the leadership should not be moving motions and asking the House to take decisions that they should take and bringing it to us. I know it is the decision of the House to do, but it is not for Parliament to fight, because the majority have majority, to fight the decision of the majority on the minority about representation. So I'll urge the majority leader to stand down on this motion, do negotiations on the points which you raise, which are very legitimate, and then tomorrow or even today, they can bring an amendment to it on an addendum for Parliament to take it. We can take it today.
So that's the Bimbala Member of Parliament there, Dominic Initiwo, speaking after Mama Yaria communicated that decision to remove Alexander Penyoma from the delegation of Ghana to the ECOWAS Parliament. This was to fulfill the 30% threshold of women or female representation on that delegation. Well, the person who was named to replace Alexander Penyoma, the Deputy Minority Leader, the Asokwa Member of Parliament, Patricia PJ, says, look, well, thank you for this, but then again, I'm not interested. I don't like it, you know. So she issued a statement, and she says, she's addressed it to the Speaker. I respectfully write to express my objection and hereby decline to be included in the reconstituted list of Ghana's delegation to the ECOWAS Parliament as adopted on the floor of Parliament today. An action that was taken in the absence of my good self. She wasn't in Parliament, and the minority leader. And so he says, I wish to place on record that I was neither consulted nor did I give my consent to be considered as a replacement for Minority Leader Alexander Penyoma on the ECOWAS Parliament delegation. Look, since I don't want any trouble, no, don't do this. She goes on to say, at no point have I expressed any intention to replace my leader. And I am particularly concerned that this development appears to be a calculated effort to cause division between myself and my leader. Mr. Speaker, prior to today's proceedings, there was an understanding by leadership that the minority leader would be on the ECOWAS Parliament delegation, as was communicated to the Committee of Selection. It is therefore deeply troubling that a contrary nomination was advanced on the floor without consultation, and even more so that the proposal was made by the majority leader. And goes on to say, beyond the procedural impropriety, this action also contravenes the legal and institutional framework governing the ECOWAS Parliament. Once a member is sworn in as an ECOWAS parliamentarian, the member's tenure runs for a term of 4 years. When elected as Speaker or Deputy Speaker, that tenure is coterminous with the parliamentary term. So it says, Penyoma was duly sworn in as member of the ECOWAS Parliament last year and subsequently elected as a Deputy Speaker. His tenure by law and by ECOWAS protocol remains valid and ongoing. So there is really no legal or procedural justification for his removal. Any attempt to replace him on the delegation not only breaches the law of internal parliamentary practice, but also violates ECOWAS statutes. It goes on and on. And Dr. Jonathan Atanchurchill, what's your reading of this, especially where Patricia Pejay makes the point that she feels this is a calculated attempt to cause division between herself and Penyoma?
That was below the belt. It's just the politics of it. The point is that if you listen to the majority leader, he suggested to me that most often than not, these kinds of delegations have been held by deputy leaders. Deputy. So I believe that when Mr. Penyoma was nominated for that particular portfolio, that was a time when he was deputizing Mr. Sechi Mensah-Bonsu. So if that is the case, then it means that now that you are a substantive minority leader, that if that is the convention, then it is your deputy that must be a member of that particular delegation. That being said, you are talking about a woman, if you listen carefully to her during the vetting proceedings, most often than not, her questions have been focused on female representation. So if an opportunity of this sort has come, and if this deputy thing is anything to go by, then it means that you qualify. Importing the idea that they want to create a rift between you and your leader, I think that is a bit far-fetched. Apart from that, if that is the case, then it means that the good old woman, Patricia, Auntie Patricia, is probably caving in under some kind of internal pressure, for which reason she is, of course, spewing this kind of information into the public domain. Because other than that, I do not see the reason why, if the convention has been what Mr. Ayaraga has preached, then you really duly qualify. That being said, is it the case that, that particular place, there are certain perquisites of office that, if you get there, you are going to, enjoy it or something of that sort? I don't really know.
Right.
But I think that if we are talking about a woman who preaches that kind of representation for females all over the period, and you've been given such, a phenomenal, what's it called, opportunity.
Right.
Why will you turn it down? And if you want to turn it down, she can do that on the quiet, without necessarily sounding a bit politically, agitated, as it were.
Well, we'll see how the company will look on this. But tomorrow, this is going to be obviously one conversation on the floor of Parliament. We'll see how it plays out. Dr. Jonathan Asanchotri, thank you for joining us. He's a political analyst and a lecturer, senior lecturer at the University of Cape Coast. Also to you, Dr. Rashid Duman, Executive Director of the Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs. Thank you for joining us. We're back shortly after this quick break here on Ghana Tonight. We'll tell you what the Auditor-General's report has captured when it comes to the financial improprieties that has led to possible financial loss to the state and how much we're losing as a result. Stay with us. Welcome back. This is Ghana Tonight. We're live on 3FM 92.7. Coming up next, the 2024 Auditor-General's report reveals that an overwhelming 15.8 billion cedis, let that sink in, 15.8 billion cedis, representing 86% of all public financial irregularities originated from institutions under the Ministry of Energy. Now, the total irregularities across the 15, from what we're hearing now, the public boards and all the institutions as captured in the Auditor General's report amounted to 18.4 billion. Now, out of the 18.4 billion, institutions under the Energy Ministry alone accounted for 15.8. Now, stay with me and follow me closely. So this is it. The 2024 financial irregularities, that's monies that were lost as a result of procurement breaches, diversion of monies under declaration, and then also all of these financially related matters in the public sector, as captured in the Auditor General's report, increased by 109% as compared to the amount of money lost or captured as financial irregularities in the 2023 Auditor General's report. 2023, by the Auditor General's report, 8.79 billion is what was captured as possible misappropriation of funds under declaration and monies lost to procurement breaches and so on. Fast forward to 2024, the Auditor General's audit report of the public boards and institutions in the public sector has recorded 18.41 billion cedis of monies possibly lost to financial irregularities emanating from procurement breaches under declaration, and then also some other decisions that has resulted to the possible loss of this money to the state. That's you and I. And out of this 18.41 billion, 15.8 billion, that's about 86%, was caused by institutions in the Energy Ministry or under the Energy Ministry. 86% of this total cost of the monies were possibly lost as a result of financial irregularities as captured in the Auditor General's report. 18.4, 15.8 billion. And let's take a look at how things are playing out. In just ECG, according to the Auditor General, the report that captured 2024, in 2023, ECG underdeclared over 2.95 billion Ghana cedis in revenue. Instead of disclosing the actual collection of 11.59 billion, here's what it did. The company reported just 8.64 billion cedis to the Ministry of Energy and other relevant authorities. So there was that shortfall of 2.953 billion cedis. You recall that when the former managing director of ECG was asked this particular question, there were some answers he gave. Beyond that, ECG also failed to disburse collected revenue to state-owned enterprises and independent power producers under the cash waterfall mechanism to the tune of 1.29 billion. Now, these actions from the report, Auditor General's report, described by the AG as misleading and unjustifiable, representing a major breach of public trust. Quite apart from that, there was a tax obligation as well that was defaulted in terms of tax remit to the Ghana Revenue Authority, same ECG, some 70.9 million. Apart from that, there were some unpaid invoices that ECG did not pay to Bui Power Authority, $729 million. Since 2020, this debt has been building. Bui Power Authority itself defaulted on some loans that it had taken, and the cost of defaulting, the penalty on the loans that they are taking as a result of the default is over $846,000. They are not alone in this. GMPC, they also entered a loan arrangement on behalf of the Ministry of Finance with no formal documentation. They failed to secure title deeds for a $6.3 million property it acquired in Tema. GMPC also continued to publish oil and gas reserves reports without external validation, raising questions about data reliability and so on. Look, this matter We're just laying the foundation today, and we're going to have a big conversation tomorrow. That every year, the Auditor-General does his work, puts the report out. These institutions will appear before the Public Accounts Committee, and then we see it. What happens? Have people been punished? Have people been surcharged? Any retrievals? We'll have a conversation tomorrow night. So make a date with us tomorrow at 10 p.m. on Ghana Tonight. On behalf of the rest of the team, we do appreciate your company. I am Alfred Ocansey. Have a good night.
Ghana Tonight is brought to you by Flamingo Paint. Superior durability, superior hiding, superior coverage, simply superior.
Sasso insecticide spray and coil.